Welcome to the hidden corners where truth and terror collide. Discover a realm where the lines between the living and the supernatural blur as you embark on a journey to the paranormal and visit the mysterious hidden corners of your mind.
This is Book 3 of the Wolfman Chronicles. Chapter 1, A Bitter Homecoming, Mexico and Montana. I stalk my prey through the densely shadowed undergrowth, my senses attuned to its slightest movement. The anticipation of the kill courses through my veins like wildfire. My heart beats in rhythm with the pulse of my prey, each heartbeat echoing the primal urge to hunt, to pursue, to conquer. The scent of fear tantalizes my nostrils, drawing me deeper into the desert wilderness, awaiting the thrill of the chase. I am a ghost among the tall mesquite and the creosote bushes. With the stealth born of centuries of instinct, I move silently, swiftly. My eyes gleam with predatory focus. Every muscle is coiled with tension as I wait for the perfect moment to strike. And then, with a burst of speed that defies gravity, I launch myself forward, the rush of adrenaline drowning out all other sensations as I pursue my quarry with relentless determination. The world narrows to a single exhilarating pursuit, the chase, the hunt. And when at last I emerge triumphant, my jaws clasped around the throbbing pulse of life, I am reminded once again of the timeless truth that in the wild, only the strong survive. But as the taste of victory floods my senses and the warm blood drips down my chin and onto the soft fur of my neck, I see her face, the woman I loved, Sasha. With a howl that pierces the stillness of the desert night, I announce my dominance to all who dare to challenge me. And I call out my pain. The echoes of my cry reverberate through the ancient desert landscape and bounce off the sandstone cliffs and dance up the gully. And even as I revel in my triumph and tear at the flesh of my prey, I am mindful of the unending cycle of life and death that governs the wilderness away from the lives of men. For tomorrow, another hunt awaits, another challenge to overcome, another opportunity to walk among them. And so, with the taste of my prey still lingering upon my tongue, I disappear into the darkness of the desert night once more, a silent sentinel of the night, forever bound to the eternal rhythm of the hunt, cursed to live as half man, half beast, capable of feeling the pain of a broken heart. Jack awoke to the smell of chicory coffee brewing in the kitchen. Rosa had once again put on her customary spread of freshly made tortillas, frijoles, huevos rancheros. There was freshly squeezed orange juice and a big platter of fruit. "I see you were out hunting again last night," she remarked as Jack walked into the kitchen. She poured him a cup of coffee. I guess that means you won't be hungry for breakfast." Jack kissed her cheek and took a cup of coffee she offered him, but didn't speak. He walked out into the courtyard, grateful for the morning sun. He realized he was finally beginning to feel warm again. After weeks spent in the frigid, snowy landscape of Russia in the far north, he breathed in deeply. He sipped his hot coffee, raised his face to the sun. It might warm my skin, he thought to himself, but it won't warm my heart. Miguel walked out to meet him. "Rosa has cooked your favorite breakfast again this morning. I think she's starting to feel offended that you aren't eating." Jack didn't answer. Miguel sighed. "Long night again, Jack. Maybe we should saddle up the horses and go for a ride. Get your mind out of Russia and back here in this beautiful country." He waved his arm, encompassing the whole landscape of his ranch, deep in the heart of Chihuahua, Mexico. "I'll tell Rosa to cover up the food. We can eat when we get back." He walked back inside to inform his housekeeper that they'd be back in a couple hours. And when the lovebirds wake up, tell them I'm getting tired of their shenanigans. It's keeping me up at night. He laughed as Rosa shooed him out of the kitchen. Miguel bred and raised some of the finest horses in Mexico, and it was because of his reputation as a breeder that he was able to maintain this large ranch. He'd spent many years providing the cartels with the strongest and fastest racehorses, and it had brought him a rare commodity in Mexico: protection. He had bought his safety on the back of a horse, quite literally. They saddled and bridled two of his mares and headed out into the desert. "Where were you last night?" Miguel asked. Jack sighed deeply. "I don't know. Somewhere out in the back 40, I suppose." "You see anything interesting?" "No, a couple coyotes, lots of rabbit." "What did you catch? You look pretty beat this morning." Jack shrugged his shoulders. "A pronghorn. Fast little devil. I was tracking a mountain lion I saw out here a couple of nights ago. It's been after the pronghorn." "Have you seen any javelinas?" Miguel knew they were around the ranch. He'd seen their tracks just recently. "No javelinas, but I did come across their scent. They smelled just like pigs." "Well, thanks for keeping the ranch clear of unwanted wild animals, but really, Jack, you should try to get some sleep. You're looking pretty rough around the edges," Miguel said. Jack raised an eyebrow at him. "Well, it's better than listening to all the activity going on in Julian and Juanita's room, or Cat and Usko's for that matter." "Damn straight," Miguel laughed. "We sound just like a couple old bachelors. I think it's time we run into town and get us some women." Now Jack laughed. "Miguel, I do believe that's all you ever think about. You haven't changed one bit since we were boys." They broke their horses into a run and raced back to the barn. Julian was sitting on the veranda smoking a cigar and talking with Usko. "Hey guys, how was the ride? Usko here is trying to convince me to take Juanita to Norway for the honeymoon. What do you think?" Jack responded slowly. "You guys do what you want. I know I've had enough of snow and cold to last me a good long time. I just want to bask here in this hot sun for a while. Did you set a date for the wedding yet?" "Well, Juanita says we should do it in April, before the rains come." "Okay, well, that gives me a little bit of time," Jack responded. "Well, time for what?" "Well, I'm thinking of heading up to the ranch for a bit. Make sure everything's okay up there. Maybe get it ready for sale. I've been gone a long time. I've missed a couple of calving seasons now, and it's been a bit since I've heard from my ranch manager. He hasn't returned my calls since we've been back here. I'm wondering if I really have a ranch to return to." Now Miguel was surprised at Jack's news. "You haven't heard from Angus? Since when?" "Well, since I left Russia. I've left him a few messages, several texts. So far he hadn't gotten back to me. I left word with Brandon, run by the ranch and see what's up. Hell, I've been gone so long, Angus probably figures it's his ranch now. I've got half a mind to give it to him anyway. He's a good man, good ranch manager." "Well, that's got to have you pretty worried," Julian replied. "When are you leaving?" Jack sighed. "I don't know. In a day or two. We've got to get this whole identity thing sorted out, and I haven't even told Kat yet. You know, I don't like leaving her, but I know she's got the three of you guys watching out for her." "Well, who'll be watching out for you, Jack?" Miguel asked. "Maybe I should come too, just in case there's trouble." "No," Jack replied. "I'm sure everything's fine. It's calving time. Angus is just busy with that, I'm sure. Anyway, I'd feel safer knowing that you three were here watching out for the girls." And Miguel didn't like the sound of that. He knew Jack wasn't in the best frame of mind. Depression had set in after Jack had realized he'd been betrayed by that Russian woman he was hung up on. It had been a very stressful couple of months for his friend, but on the other hand, maybe a trip to his ranch in Montana would get his mind off his heartache, set things straight for him. At any rate, it wasn't his decision to make. If Jack wanted to leave, there wouldn't be any stopping him. Jack tried the ranch line again. It was bothering him more than he let on to the others. Something didn't feel right, and he didn't want to wait around Miguel's ranch any longer. He needed to get home and see what was going on. Angus had called every Sunday, just like clockwork, to fill Jack in on all the goings-on at the ranch. While in Russia, he had trouble with his phone, so he wasn't surprised when he didn't get his usual Sunday phone calls. And then things got crazy after that with trying to rescue Cat and driving clear across Russia through dense forest with no cell reception. Why, he'd managed to talk to Angus a couple times when he did have service, but since leaving Russia, there'd been no communication with him. He'd left several text messages on Angus's cell phone. Once he'd returned to Miguel's ranch, he tried several times at all hours of the day and night to both the main ranch line and to his cell phone, but there'd been no response at all. He tried a few of the ranch hands' numbers as well. They were cowboys and not in the habit of carrying a phone while they were out working, so there wouldn't be any cell reception once they left the ranch house or the bunkhouse anyways. So he hadn't had any luck there either. Well, Brandon lived down the valley from Jack's ranch and was his closest neighbor. He told Jack he hadn't seen any of the guys around the saloon in town lately. Several of the ranch hands liked to spend their days off shooting pool and drinking beer down at the old Blue Heeler on a regular basis. Brandon liked to stop in occasionally for a beer. He mentioned he was surprised at not seeing the usual cowboys hanging out there. And Jack asked Brandon to take a drive out to the ranch and make sure everything was okay. Now he was just waiting for Brandon to call him back. Kat now, she was busy helping Juanita with her wedding planning. For someone who wanted a small, intimate wedding, the planning spoke otherwise. Rosa wasn't about to share her kitchen with anyone, so she was insisting on catering the wedding herself. Now, Juanita was trying to convince her that she should take the day off, let someone else handle it. They'd been arguing back and forth for weeks. Then there were the phone calls to the florist and the decorators and the bakeries. It was looking like this small, intimate wedding was going to turn out to be a social event of the year. Just a regular fiesta. Now, the tent with the gypsy fortune tellers needed to be on the opposite side of the hacienda from the mariachi bands, and there needed to be red hibiscus, not yellow or orange. They needed to hire photographers, security staff, peacock handlers. Peacocks, Miguel yelled. Juanita would not budge. Peacocks needed to walk amongst the guests, fanning their brilliant feathers. Miguel had gone inside for a bottle of tequila, but he quickly retreated to the veranda where Julian sat with Usko and Jack. I see why you're staying out here. He offered everyone a shot. Let's hope we all survive this wedding. Jack's phone rang. He glanced down at the screen and saw it was Brandon. Excuse me for a minute. He got up and walked down the veranda steps to the courtyard. Hey, Brandon, what'd you find out? It ain't good, Jack. I think you better get out here quick now. Jack booked a flight for the next day under the names James Maverick, using his fake identification card and passport that Sasha's brother had procured for them while they were in Finland. Landing at the Billings Logan International Airport, Jack rented a truck and headed up to Big Sky. A few miles outside of Billings, Jack called Brandon again. Now, I'm a few hours out. Do you think I can stay at my ranch tonight? No, Sheriff says best if no one disturbs the place yet. He had his deputies out there all day. They're dusting for prints and what all else they do in a situation like this. Jack, you're not going to believe what it looks like out there. I don't want you going there alone. You're welcome to stay with me and Lynn here at the ranch, and then I can go out with you in the morning. The sheriff will meet us out there too. I told him you need to use the name James Maverick for now. Sheriff agrees it's best to lay low, Brandon said. More than half this valley knows who I am, so it won't take long for someone to see me and spread word that I'm back in town, Jack replied. Well, I know that, but let's try to keep that from happening as possible. Just head straight to my house in the dark. The sheriff's already told his men to use your assumed name and to not let anyone know it's you. Not till we find out who did this. As far as anyone knows, you're James Maverick, Special Investigation Unit from the FBI. Damn, really? That's a new one. I'm not kidding you, Jack. The carnage out there is beyond your wildest imagination. Jack wondered just what that might mean. Beyond your wildest imagination? Oh, he'd seen a lot of things these past few years that were beyond his wildest imagination. Brandon had tried to prepare him for the worst, but he could tell Brandon wasn't telling him everything. Before Jack left Mexico, Miguel and Julian made sure everyone was well armed. Jack took Catherine aside. Make sure you and Usco know how to use these. I don't know exactly what I'm facing back in the States, but if they were targeting me, all of you might be targets too. Don't trust anyone. He wasn't entirely sure he even trusted Usco, although he hadn't given him any reason not to. His feelings for Kat seemed genuine enough, Jack thought. However, he had trusted Sasha once, too. Miguel assured him everything would be under control. Give me a call as soon as you land in Billings, and then call me from the ranch. You've got a lot of people here who are really worried, Jack. If I don't hear from you, I'm on the very next plane out there, so don't screw around and forget to call me. Jack shook his hand. Thank you, Miguel. I will call. Jack held true to his promise and called Miguel from Brandon's ranch. I'm staying here tonight. They won't let me go out to the ranch alone. The sheriff's coming by first thing in the morning, and we're going to follow him out there. Brandon just keeps saying it's bad, but he won't give me no details. I think the sheriff told him not to say anything till we're all there together. Well, okay then, Jack, but you call me tomorrow once you've gotten there and had a look around. Keep your wits about you. Something could trigger you, and you can't let that happen. Jack chuckled. Thanks, Miguel. You sound like you're becoming my mother. Miguel spoke a few choice words back into the phone in Spanish, but he ended the call with, well, we'll talk tomorrow, brother. Brandon was right. Jack could not have imagined the scene he was about to witness in his wildest imagination. Pulling up to the ranch, there was police vehicles lining the drive and yellow crime scene tape stretched from one building to the next. Jack, Brandon, and the sheriff, they walked past the bunkhouse to the main house. We should go in the main house first, the sheriff said. It's not as bad as that building over there. He nodded towards the bunkhouse. The front door looked as it always had, warm and inviting, minus the yellow crime scene tape. Jack noticed bloodstains on the wood. Don't touch the door handle, Sheriff said quickly. He reached in front of Jack and opened it with his gloved hand. Don't touch anything. We're still dusting for prints. We removed the bodies yesterday, but we're still photographing the crime scene. At the door, an officer handed them elastic shoe covers, and Jack slipped his on over his boots, then crossed through the entry and walked down the hallway. From the wagon wheel chandelier in the living room, there was a rope dangling. The sheriff handed Jack a photograph. This is what we found yesterday. The photograph was of Jack's ranch manager, Angus, hanging from the chandelier with the rope around his neck. His intestines had been laid open, and he'd been eviscerated. Jack, he gasped and whispered, "Oh, my God," and dropped down onto his knees. Brandon put his hand on Jack's shoulder. As bad as the photograph was, at least he hadn't been the one to find his hired hand in that state. "Are you okay to go on, Jack?" Sheriff said. "I mean, Maverick or James, or what am I supposed to call you?" Jack couldn't speak at first. He took a deep breath of air and said, "Show me the rest, and then just call me Jack." The three men walked upstairs to the bedroom. Blood covered the bed and the pillows. The sheriff handed him another photograph to Jack. It was Angus's wife, or what was left of her. The bunkhouse was worse yet. Blood covered nearly every surface. More photographs were handed to Jack. It was too much for him to take in all at once. All of his ranch hands had met a horrible death. They walked back outside. "What are you thinking, Sheriff? You think this was a man or a beast?" The sheriff stared into Jack's eyes. Possibly both. Walking back to Brandon's truck, Jack stopped and looked at Brandon. "I am so sorry you had to see this, man. You were the first one here. I don't know how you handled it." Brandon looked down at the ground. "I threw up all over the place, cried called the sheriff, and then I called you. Now you can understand why I couldn't tell you over the phone. I just couldn't. I drove home and I cried in Lynn's arms. I feel numb today. That's why I was able to bring you out here. You know, the way those bodies were torn up, I would think animal, beast of some kind, but stringing up Angus like that and getting all them bodies at once in the bunkhouse, we're dealing with something else here. I don't know what, but it's pure evil. I'm telling you, pure evil. Jack took another deep breath. Well, we need to get to the bottom of it. Thank you, Brandon, for letting me stay at your place. I'm not ready to go back in there yet. Absolutely, Brandon said. The two men got in the truck and drove away. Jack couldn't hold back the tears. He took his bandana out of his pocket and wiped his eyes. How much sorrow can one heart hold, he wondered. And where would one even begin to search for the killer? Jack called Miguel from Brandon's ranch house. Hey, Miguel, it's Jack. What did you find? Tell me, Miguel asked. Jack sighed loudly into the phone. It's bad, Miguel. Angus and all the guys are dead, torn apart. Angus was strung up from the chandelier in the living room, his entrails hanging out of him. His wife was torn apart upstairs in the bedroom. All the ranch hands were literally torn to shreds in the bunkhouse. What the hell? That doesn't sound like the Russians or the cartel. It sounds more like werewolves, Jack. I know. And for some reason, I'm the target, or at least you would think so since it happened at my ranch to my people. They were torn apart like a wolf might do. But with Angus being strung up like that, there's more to this story. Looks like I'll be here for a while. I understand that, Jack. Let me make sure everything's safe around here. Then in a few days, I'll fly out there and see if I can help with anything. I plan on hiring a few extra security guards for the property. You remember what I said, Miguel. Don't trust anyone. If you're doing any hiring, you better damn well be sure they're safe. We can't take any chances. Better if you just stay put. I read that loud and clear. Be careful, Jack. Make sure you keep your back covered, too, even those folks you're staying with. You just don't know who you can trust, so don't trust anyone. Yep. Okay, buddy. I'll check in with you tomorrow. As Jack lay in bed thinking about the photographs he had seen, he wished now that he'd looked at them more closely. Were there bite marks? Were the wounds consistent with the tearing flesh from razor-sharp canine teeth? Or was it the work of someone trying to make it look like a beast had done it? He'd have to wait for the forensic reports now. He tried to close his eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. He wanted to run. He needed to feel the wild beast inside him. He needed to howl. Usko and Catherine sat in the courtyard listening to the crickets and cicadas. He had never been away from the steppes of Mongolia and the northern lands of the reindeer. The desert night appeared magical to him. Shooting stars raced across the sky, and a coyote yipped its high-pitched call in the distance. Soon several more joined the chorus. He laughed. It is February, and here we are sitting outside at night in just our light clothing. This seems so strange to me. Just as I felt in your world, bundled up in its reindeer hides and riding in a sledge, watching the northern lights dancing overhead. Our worlds are so different, Usko. He took her hand in his. My world is wherever you are. Catherine laughed. You're so corny, Usko, but you sure are sweet. What do you say we go for a run? The two stripped off their clothing and ran off into the night on the search for wild rabbits. Jack slept fitfully. He dreamed he was running through a dark forest, a pack of rabid wolves at his heels. They had the bodies of wolves, but the heads were human with blood dripping from their fangs. He awoke in a panic, sweat soaking his sheets. He got up and quietly walked down the hallway to the bathroom, careful not to disturb Brandon and Lynn in the bedroom down the hall. Moonlight illuminated the hallway through the window over the stairs. He couldn't return to his room. He needed to be outside in the cold night air. He needed to walk, run, anything to get his mind clear. He took his heavy jacket off the hook in the mudroom and put on his boots. Now, February in Montana is bitter cold, but there was only a light dusting of snow on the ground. After spending time in the Arctic, Jack hardly noticed the cold now. There are still many more months of winter to come, he thought as he walked from the house to the barn. The horses stirred as he walked by. Animals can always sense my wild nature, yet humans cannot. He followed the fence line down the lane past the barn and headed for the river. It felt good to walk, but he didn't want to risk changing into his wolf form this close to humans. Ranchers in Montana are used to wolves attacking their livestock, and they shoot any wolf they see. Wolves are a protected predator in many states, but the rules are quite different in Idaho and Montana and Wyoming. In these 3 states, ranchers can shoot wolves on the spot if they are harassing or attacking livestock or pets, and Jack just didn't want to take any chances. The river meandered through the ranch land and much of it on private property, but there were spots you could still access it. Walking along the water's edge, the silver light of the moon danced upon the water's surface, casting shimmering reflections that swayed with the gentle current. The riverbank was outlined with the shadows of bushes and trees and tall grasses. It was peaceful and quiet, and Jack breathed in the silence and the beauty, just letting it calm his nerves. Across the expanse of water and up on the bank by several yards, a pair of glowing yellow eyes watched Jack as he ambled along the water's edge. Drool formed at the corners of her mouth, and she pulled back her lips into a snarl. She raised her neck and let his scent fill her nostrils, but she didn't move from her crouching position. She was content to watch and wait.